Okay, so this is hopefully now the end of a very intense hot summer or winter for those of you in the southern hemisphere, but those of you in the northern hemisphere had quite a bit of a hot summer here in all regards. So energetically, we've had a lot of different waves, intensity waves come in, and it's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel a bit depleted right now. It's very important actually that you recognize, that this is the time where you really need to invest in yourself now, in your ability to keep your energy stable and keep your energy in a balanced state. So it's okay to take a time out. It's okay to slow down right now because we still have a lot of transformation business going on here in the collective. And right now is really the time to go into this sort of recovery mode with yourself and to allow things to go deep. Allow things to go deep. This will feel very uplifting and familiar and almost like home for many of you, especially those of you here in this active self-healing community. But it can also feel very disconcerting for people who are not yet used to this deeper inner healing work. So healing, okay, always entails being willing to feel everything that needs to be felt, being willing to acknowledge everything that's being revealed. And this requires a willingness to go into self-reflection. And self-reflection, guys, when we are depleted, usually turns into depression and anxiety. Okay, so when we are in the self-reflective mode, but we feel too, quote unquote, sick and tired, then it turns into our coping. Then we go into those places of feeling overwhelmed, feeling powerless, feeling helpless. And to avoid this, it's really important to see that all you need to do is to stop trying so hard. All you need to do is to really let all this now, be displayed, be revealed, and do what you need to do to feel balanced, to feel grounded, and to feel like, okay, I'm here. And, the most important thing that I would ever need to be able to handle, to be able to deal with reality is I have to be in a good condition. I have to be awake. I have to be fully there. I have to be fully present. So that's almost a mantra here for this next month, September, to be fully there, be fully present, no matter what is going on, and to first contemplate about what can I do right now to make myself feel more grounded, more in my power, more balanced, and sort of ready, to fully be present. And if it requires us to take a time out, and to check out for a day, to just like sort of lay low, then that's what's needed. To not judge ourselves for it, or to feel like a loser, or to feel like we're not performing well, because this is ultimately what triggers your ego into your coping mechanisms, into these places where you go into fantasy, or where you go into powerlessness or victimhood. Let's look at that here real quick. These coping traits, that are triggered through our ego when we go low. Where do I have them? So tired, depletion. Accept it, deal with it by giving yourself a break. Is anybody feeling like there's something from the past really leaving you right now, like a new chapter? Is anybody feeling something like that? This is actually the main characteristic of this time here in September. You know, this feeling of sort of a new wave, a new cycle, a new, you know, sort of page in the book. And this, you know, for you guys to understand why it's also so important that you're in a good place here. However you approach it now will more or less determine how this is going to go for you, this new chapter. Okay, so you want to be fully present because there's going to be so many changes that if you're not in the right place to hold your higher vibratory alignment, it will constantly feel overwhelming. It will constantly feel like you running after the train. So the train has left the station, guys. And, you know, whatever it is that was still, you know, holding you back in that station is now gone. And revisiting it and going back into the past and rehashing and double, you know, or second guessing yourself about decisions in the past is not going to help you. It's going to drag you down. It's going to hold you back. So this is it. Looking into the rear mirror is not going to allow you to move forward. So if you want to be, you know, sort of at the top of that energetic wave, you know, that allows you to really start something new now, where you can say, okay, you know, I accept all the learning experiences of the past, and I'm okay, you know, with whatever, you know, my karma and so forth has brought forward, you know, then it's really important now to embrace the new. Let the old be. Yes. Lots of new beginnings. You know, I'm reading your guys' chat. Yes, and yes, and we can still observe the chaos in the collective around us. And this is here why I've spoken so much about bifurcation in the last years, because it's take on form right now. You will see the split in people who have, you know, awareness, who are willing to be fully present in all these changes that are going on in the world, and then you have the people who opt out, who choose to stay unaware, if you will, no judgment intended. For them, it will be a very chaotic next, you know, sort of 2 to 3 years. For those of us who have already been embracing, you know, who've already been red pilled, you know, either through our own volition or, you know, through some of sobering effects or events in our lives, you know, for us it's okay, you know, the changes. We want those changes. But most people, you know, you've heard me talk about the 85 percentile of the population who wants to preserve, wants to keep things the same. They will resist those changes. So while, you know, for those of us who are approaching it aware, this is actually a positive time now, we will be very challenged in observing other people going through quite a bit of turmoil. If I would have to boil it down as far as the healing resonances that will be very beneficial for us here, especially in the next 2 weeks, it would probably be forgiveness, but not the kind of forgiveness that brings in guilt and shame aspects or judgment aspects, but the kind of forgiveness that accepts things the way they are. You know, that everything is perfect the way it is, and it had to be that way. So there really is nothing that needs to be forgiven other than, you know, doubting or resisting or you know, trying to control it too much. So this kind of forgiveness is the higher vibratory version, of what people commonly understand under forgiveness, namely allowing. It's a very beautiful and empowering energy here for September, allowing, and to remind ourselves that there really isn't anything to forgive. When we move on due to natural, the natural evolution of ourselves, it doesn't mean that, we need to have regrets or guilt for leaving others or situations behind. You're not leaving them behind. It's a natural progression, guys. So in regards of relationships, this may actually be a little challenging here due to some of the aspects that I've already mentioned, that some people simply choose not to move on, choose to not want to leave that train station, or to jump on that train. So you're going to feel challenged with other people here in how they handle things. And there will be the part in you, the healer part in you, or the part in you that is aware and that wants other people to progress or to evolve as well, that you'll run into trouble with, because you can't really make other people see it the way you see it. You have to be willing to allow that too. And again, there's no forgiveness needed because there's no judgment involved. If somebody else chooses, to stay where they're at or to preserve where they're at, then all that means to you as a self-responsible and sovereign soul to decide whether this is okay for you or not. See, if it's your neighbor, it doesn't matter. If it's your parents, it only matters in the sense of like letting them be. But if it's your partner, then you may have to make decisions whether, you want to live with this. So as we are moving here into a manifestation really of a more heart-based reality, it's not just sort of what we are striving for. This is, part of the entire collective evolution right now. As this is starting to manifest, as this is starting to take on form, we will need to ask ourselves more and more how we want things. It's not enough to just having, say, accomplished our goal that we want to have a relationship, we want to get married, we want to have kids. No. We also need to discern now how we want this and if this is conducive for, your awareness, for your alignment. If you are in a relationship that is based on codependency, or that has a lot of aspects of, like, say, coping, perhaps even addiction, or, sort of really destructive behavioral patterns, it's not about changing the other person. It's about you deciding whether you want to stay or not. Does that make sense? So the question of how do I want this, and how congruent is this, and how, does that affect my energy or my life? Not in an egotistical way, but in the sense of it's up to you to decide that. That's part of your responsibility now as a true self. This whole evolution into truth, this new paradigm, into more truth, into more congruence, is very threatening for everyone who's not in truth. And most of us here as empaths know this already, because we've lived with this all our lives. How other people can feel threatened by us, or judge us or move away from us because they feel that we see things differently, or we see things in a way that puts them into a place of inferiority. Okay, so granted, there is a lot of aspects or a lot of issues with spiritual superiority and spiritual specialness that many of us had to work through or are still working through. So just because we are awakened, say, or we have this inner connection that can guide us, this inner knowingness, doesn't mean that we are, more special or that we are better than others. All that means is that we can see more, okay, and we can feel more when things are true and when they are not based on truth. And that threatens everyone who is not in truth. But it's not our job, to lead them to truth. It's our job to live in our truth. So it's not about us, telling others how they're wrong. It's about us really going into our power and standing our ground here, with what is true to us based on our perception and our knowingness, and become more consequential about it. To not accept degradation, to not accept anything that is contractive for us, that is, sort of life negating. Sounds a bit extreme, but what I mean is that, is destructive behaviors, say. Destructive behaviors, when we observe them in others, it's not our job to make the person change. It's our job to walk away from it. And if there are things that involve us, that perhaps have led to in relationships, that's often the case because it's two people that are involved in those patterns, right? That where we have enabled or contributed to this back and forth of destructive behaviors, then it's our responsibility to change our side of it, to own our part and to keep our side of the fence clean. And oftentimes this entails letting go of enabling or letting go of criticizing. So depending on which end of the scale we are at, if we are sort of more of an active coper or more of an passive coper, like a more like an internal reactor, or more an external reactor, if you know what I mean with this. It can mean that we have to either stop doing things or that we have to start doing things differently. To not accept life degrading or negating energies. So this can be quite a bit of a challenge, all right? Because it means that we have to literally face everything where we are still in illusion. So if I'm in a relationship that is destructive in nature, whether there are karmic aspects involved or not, there first has to come the choice that we will no longer engage, that we will no longer enable this. And then comes the strategy. And the strategy to deal with this in the future is, of course, always in the first phase of that, to stop doing it, to say no, to say, you know what, I'm not engaging in this anymore. No, to say no to that. This can also apply to work situations, you know, situations where you need to make a stance for yourself. And when you realize that whatever it is that you're engaging in or what you expose yourself to is contractive for you, is not conducive for you, the first thing you need to do is say stop. The second thing then is to take yourself some space to feel out, you know, how you're going to handle this. And oftentimes, guys, this leads to needs. What are my needs here, and which of these needs are not met with this? So there's a reason, of course, why we are stuck in relationships or work situations or even situations with our children or our friends, you know, and why we have tolerated this and why we have enabled this in the past. Because there is something there, you know, that we are either afraid of losing, or there's something there that we're not getting, that we are trying to almost like, forgive me the wording here, I don't know a better word, to prostitute ourselves for, get it, you know, attention or love or validation or something like that. And either way, both of these are so-called coping mechanisms. When we find out that this is the case and they are not conducive for us, you know, it doesn't matter who caused what. It doesn't matter who started it. It's our job, our responsibility to know what our needs are. The strategy then has to do with how can I, within my relationship, within my workplace, or with my kids and friends, communicate my needs better. So that would be keeping your side of the fence clean, meaning that, okay, now that you're seeing this and now that you said no, you know, it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, get divorced, you know, and quit your job and sell your kids. Okay, that's not what that means. It means that you have to have the resolve to stop engaging in it. And then the second phase to that is, you know, after you felt out what it actually is that you need, or what it actually is that you're afraid of, to start communicating that better, to engage in a different way with your environment, you know, and to say, hey, you know, it's, you know, whatever you choose to do is okay, but this is the way this affects me. And, you know, I do not appreciate that. So can we negotiate? Can we find a way that allows us to do this differently? So as we then, you know, go into communication, we also need to go into negotiation. And I know many of you are at this place, especially in regards to your work, you know, where you have come to this place where you realize that even though you get money for it, you know, it's no longer conducive for you and your journey, you know, and where you need to come up with new strategies on how to make money. Or, you know, you may already have an inkling, you may already feel that you want to do your own business, say, or that you want to, you know, change the field that you work in. Okay, then it means that you need to renegotiate these things, okay, with others and with yourself as well. This is a time now here, not just September, but till the end of the year, guys, that will entail downgrading, downsizing, but not in a negative way. More in the way that you finally let go of the things that you don't need anyway, that, you know, just simply force you to go into compromises that are not conducive for you. Yeah, so the downsizing, Justine, like I've said, this can, on a practical level, this can mean literally on a physical 3D material level, that you let go of certain things that you thought you needed to have. Like someone who has a big house and, you know, really isn't using it. and where maybe the time when you got the house was because you thought that's how you have to present yourself, or that's how whatever how you can show off or whatever. This is no longer important to you. Then be consequential, then sell the big house, and get yourselves a house where you can feel much more congruent and much more true with what you have. Some of you have already gone through this here in this year. Downsizing does not mean that you have to give up things. It just means that you have to shed the things that you have been carrying around with you almost like a burden. It's very often not needed to move this big wheel. It's just a waste of energy. So downsizing in maybe things pertaining your body can be literally downsizing and shedding some weight. That will be very beneficial here till the end of the year. Other things that will be beneficial to downsize are things that, say social activities, or things that you've kept yourself busy with, if that makes sense, things that, I don't know, maybe things such as like a gym membership that you never went to, that you never took advantage of. And so downsizing can also mean sharing resources, and this will be a big theme here, guys, for the entire collective for the next almost like generation, to move into sharing resources, whether it be cars or bikes or um, even homes, or foods, co-ops. This is huge. There's a reason why businesses such as Uber and Lyft are so successful right now, and you will see companies like that sprout like mushrooms now. Where you can Airbnb is the same. Those are shared resources if you think about it. To rent out your space when you're not there, or to rent out your car when you don't use it. There's a company now that does that, kind of like Airbnb for your car. Okay, so there are things that are happening here in our collective that are paving the way for all of this. Urban farming, like going into collaboration with others, and really seeing the advantage. This is not necessarily something that we are forced to be doing. We're doing this because it makes more sense, because it's more efficient. And what does more efficient mean? More efficient mean that we can spend our time, we can spend our energy with other things, with things that are more conducive for us, such as education, maybe, such as work that comes or that supports our heart, healing work, or even volunteering work, or things that go more into a long-term view of what's good or better for all. We will all get pulled into this, guys. This is the new paradigm. The new paradigm is away from having, getting, owning, to providing, serving, sharing, connecting. And you already know this. These are higher vibratory resonances. So everything that we can offer here, from the learning experience of our own journey, and that can perhaps provide us with a new business idea, or a new way of making money, a new way of living, a new way of being, will be conducive, will be supported from the outside through collective, just through the way things are, where things are moving. That train that I've mentioned in the beginning. So it's no coincidence that so many of you feel like you want to start your own business, that you want to be of service in some ways. So it is really important. This September here is a pivotal place in this transformational process. It's when we go into the resolve, into the resolution of the old and the resolution, to like these two different meanings of the word resolution. It's not just in regards to the past, it's also the resolve, to do something new, to approach something in a different way. So everything that expresses your truths and your willingness to be of service, to share, to provide, to relate, will go easy. Everything that is based on a paradigm of, like, say, greed or self-centeredness, specialness, will go hard, will be accompanied with struggle and suffering. So this is the larger picture here of this paradigm shift that we have been talking about. And the struggle that people experience, or these choices that we've illuminated here in the beginning, how some people choose to stay in the old paradigm, and the struggle that we will witness that they go through have to do with not being willing to shift from getting, having, and owning into being and sharing and connecting. And that's a choice that we need to respect. It's not our job. Our job is to do what we feel pulled to be doing. And, to understand that everything that is based on these higher vibratory and energy management principles, namely what is conducive for me is conducive for all. So what is conducive for all then, comes back to me as abundance. That's the larger picture of it. So everything that you are perhaps planning on doing here in the future will have a hint, or will require a view on energy management, on efficiency. And energy management, of course, related to ourselves as well as to the things that we do. Is this efficient? Is this conducive? Is this conducive for me? Is this healthy for me? Is this healthy for others? And also the deeds, because we all know how difficult it can be to work through some of our, say, destructive behaviors. There are many, many layers involved in that, and it's not always that easy. But maybe, if you remind yourself that whatever this new paradigm will bring in for you, the easiest way for you to use this natural progression, there's a natural evolutionary progression that is kicking in right now. The more you can follow these resonances and these principles that are coming in with this new paradigm, the easier it's going to go for you, the less struggle you're going to have. So from my perspective here, the biggest challenge will be to let go. And the downsizing, doesn't have to be a threatening thing, guys. That is not something that you will perceive as like a forced thing. What will feel forced sometimes for you may be that you have to really sit down and take an inventory, and really look at it. What are the things that I don't need, and not just in a material sense. you know, to really face that, you know, to say, you know what, that's a total waste of energy. That's not really getting me anywhere, and it's not leading towards expansiveness. It makes me, you know, it stresses me out, where I constantly need to force into it. I constantly need to push into it with my third chakra. I need to control it. I need to, you know, sustain it. I need to feed it. Those things are not conducive. They wear you out. That's what's depleting your energy. The constant struggle to maintain something that doesn't even have an intrinsic value or meaning to you. And when I say inventory of that, you know, what I mean with that is to go into this sort of clear cutness about that, and to say, you know what, I'm trying to maintain something here that actually has no meaning to me. It doesn't even fulfill me. It just completely stresses me out. And to just stop it. So that's then the third phase of your shifting process, is that you recognize, you know, that how much of energy it takes to actually maintain all that does not justify the struggle and the resistance, and you know, the amount of stress that flows into it, that leads you to being completely willing to let go. And this is where most of us will, you know, still need a little work, because letting go is one thing, you know, to understand this with your mind and to say, okay, I really don't need this anymore. But then to actually, you know, to actually ditch it and to actually leave it behind you, you know, is a process and not an event, guys. Okay, so you got to accept that too. And like we've experienced in the energetic adjustment session yesterday, when you know, where we send our energies through these the new energies that are coming in, there'll be a little bit of grieving. There'll be a little bit of you know, it's not as easy as I thought. And perhaps even for some of you, the fear of loneliness for a while here in September. So September will be very emotional in that way. So the downsizing, you know, the way it affects us emotionally is that it means that we have to shed some, or not have to, but need to really look in some of these sort of emotional crutches that we have been accepting in the past, that are really not doing it for us. And so when we let go of things that we've been hanging on to for a while, you know, then there's a temporary void that comes in that can scare us a bit, you know, that can pull us back into like, oh no, you know, I still need that. I still need that. I still need to go back to that. Okay, so you know, the grief, the loneliness here that we've worked out yesterday through the energetic adjustment can be in the forefront here in September, you know, emotionally. But on the positive side of that, you know, when we shed all these things that we hang on to, you know, out of coping, then you know, our heart becomes much more energized, and you know, if we can get through this initial, I don't want to call it sadness. I don't know if there's a different word in English, but it's just deep. When you go really really deep, I don't know. Let me ask you guys, who has this too? When you feel really really connected with your heart, it's almost like crying. It's almost like, for me it is. To come, it's it feels heavy, but it isn't. Who has this too, that when you connect with your heart really deep, that it the first sort of sense of it is kind of like heavy, but it's not sadness. We must not be afraid of that, guys. This is not sadness. This is a, a deep state of connection, a reflective state of connection with God, if you will, with our inner divinity. It's like this total sort of coming home type of feeling. And as I'm like sort of going into this energy right now, I'm actually starting to have tears come up myself. This is a heart activation. This is when our heart gets activated. Yes. And it's accompanied by intense emotions. And in the webinar for the energetic adjustment session, we talked about this last night, to not be afraid of these intense emotions. Some of it is just part of the shedding. Some of it is something that you have never experienced before. This deep inner connection. Yes, like you said, Robert, it's a beautiful sense of awe. Yeah, but it's not this sort of adrenaline type of, like, this neurotransmitter high. It's not it. This is much, much deeper. That's a real heart activation. Okay, and this, along with what I mentioned here earlier as themes for September, will increase our capacity for love, our capacity to hold higher vibratory energies in our life, not just sort of as part of our spiritual understanding. It's not a cognitive thing. Increasing the capacity of love means basically increasing our heart container so that we can hold these faster vibratory principles that are coming in right now, and use them to manifest a life accordingly, a way of being. And that then leads to self-actualization. That then, leads to understanding that this activation of this, our heart, requires us to be ourselves, to be authentic in everything that we do. And if we are, everything's going to be a piece of cake, because we have the energy, we are able to hold that energy. If it's just a mental construct or a wishful thinking, it won't work. And that's, where most of us experience these ups and downs all the time. We have the mental understanding, the conceptual understanding of this new paradigm or awakening or whatever you want to call this. But we're lacking the ability to hold this, because we haven't understood yet that that's, not in what we do, and especially not in what we think. Doing and thinking have, in that way, very little manifestation power. It's in how we are. It's in our way of being. And we can only be self when we act self, right? So the acting is part of it, but it's not the act itself. It's, our willingness to really step up and actualize who we are and what we have become in our journey. All this. So it's going to be a very emotionally integrating month with a lot of new chapters in your life starting. Okay, so make this your mantra here, for this month, that you engage, be fully present, engage. And always remember self-actualization, you know, to let yourself act. All right. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity here to share this with you. And we'll see each other soon. Bye bye, everyone.